Okay. Yeah, we'll start in 2 minutes. Okay. We'll wait for another 2 minutes and we'll start. Yeah, so we'll start. Hi Avinash.
Good morning, sir. Hi, sir.
Good morning.
Yeah,
So yeah,
sir. Yeah, today is my first day, sir.
no problem. Yesterday only we
Yeah.
started, and we thought
Okay,
about
sir.
the same thing what I'm going to discuss today. Okay, so we discuss
Okay,
about
sir.
uh, what are all Spring content that we are going to discuss. So these all are the topics. Uh, I have shown this too. Yeah. So these all are the topics that we are going to discuss as part of Spring framework. Okay. So we discuss Spring framework from the beginning and Spring Boot microservices. Okay. We are going to cover all these three areas: Spring framework, Spring Boot, microservices. As part of Spring framework, we covered Spring core module, then Spring JDBC, Spring ORM, AOP, Spring transaction management, security, and MVC. Okay, these are the very important modules from Spring framework. Okay, we are going to cover the 7 modules from Spring framework. Thereafter, we go with Spring Boot discussions. Okay, so in Spring Boot, how to use Spring starters, how to use Spring initializer, how to use STS. So there are many topics in Spring Boot. Okay, to start with, and how to use Spring containers and Spring Boot, how to deploy it into clouds. Okay, so we have various clouds like AWS, Azure, right, GCP. So how to deploy our Spring Boot applications into different clouds. What are all the Spring Boot dev tools we have, and about actuators, data JPA, exception handling, and Spring Boot with theme leaf, a kind of templates we have, UI templates, how we can use that, and Spring Boot with his tricks for doing failure handling. Okay, there are many topics, not only this 9, there are many other topics that we are going to discuss. And once we're done with Spring Boot, by using Spring Boot, we can able to build microservices based applications. So there we need to understand what is REST controller, how to do the connection between multiple REST services using REST template. Okay, there are many other clients also we will discuss about it, and how to do load balancing by using Eureka, how to configure Eureka server, Eureka client, and how to do distributed transaction management when we have microservices, and how to manage security in case of microservices, and how to do logging and tracing. Okay, so these are the important areas that we are going to cover as part of this training. Okay, and the prerequisites Java 8 is expecting here. Okay, basic core Java knowledge would be recommended here. Okay, and you need to have JDK in your machine, MySQL or Oracle database, and Eclipse or STS. Okay, so that's all. These are required to start with. Okay, these are required to start with. Now, what we discussed is by using Spring framework, which kind of applications we can build and how we can run. Okay, so using Spring framework, when you start implementing your application, right? Consider you are a you are you need a online shopping application, okay, for your needs. Okay, you want a online shopping application to sell your products. Okay, so using Spring framework, if you want to build that, using Spring framework, if you want to build that, we have a Spring MVC module. Okay, to implement end-to-end use case, right? End-to-end application, if you want to build Spring MVC, we use along with all other modules, we use Spring MVC from Spring Framework to build your online shopping application. Consider you have 3 modules like product management and cart management and user management. You have 3 modules along with your views, HTML pages, I mean views, combination of HTML, CSS, JavaScript, or Angular views, whatever it is, right? So we used to code everything into single application. We used to code, we write code of product, we write code of cart, and we write code of user management and view code. Everything we implement in a single application. And finally, we convert this. Hello, am I audible? Hello, hello everyone. Am I audible? Hello.
Yes, sir. Audible, sir. Yes, sir.
Oh, am I audible to everyone now? Till I lost my internet between.
I lost my internet between.
Okay, cool. Super. Yeah. So we implement all modules into a single application, and finally we convert that application into a WAR file, web archive file, and we deploy it into some server like Tomcat or WebLogic. Definitely we need servers to run our Spring application. Okay, so this is how basically using Spring we implement application. Okay, when we learn with Spring, using Spring you can implement an web application, and you need to finally convert your web application into a WAR file, and you need to deploy it into some external servers when we use Spring framework. So when you learn with Spring Boot framework, even in Spring Boot also you can do the same thing. Like you can implement your application into a single application, all the modules, your product module and cart module, user management and views, everything we can keep together into a single application. And finally, you can convert this into a WAR and you can deploy it into Tomcat. This is one way. Or if you want to deploy it into directly Java runtime environment without Tomcat or WebLogic. If you don't want to use any external servers, it's okay. Spring Boot is having its own built-in containers. You can use built-in containers to run your application. Okay. So all your modules, product module, cart module, user management module, all modules, you can finally convert this application into a jar file and you can deploy it into Java runtime. Okay. So even if you go with clouds also, in cloud you need to have a Java runtime, that is enough. But when you convert into a WAR file, right, you need a Tomcat or WebLogic kind of application server or web server, and the same servers you need to buy from clouds. Okay, you need to buy from the clouds. So in Spring Boot, right, while we use Spring Boot, generally we deploy it as a jar file. Okay, because we don't buy any additional servers, just we implement our application into a jar file and we deploy it into directly Java runtime. JRE is enough. Just Java software is enough to run your application. Why? Because Spring Boot itself internally is having Tomcat. Spring Boot itself is having Tomcat. Or else if you don't want to use Tomcat, we can use JTR and there are many open source web servers we have. Just we need to integrate with our code. Okay. So that built-in containers we can use. Same thing using Spring Boot, what you can do, you can divide your each module as a separate service instead of putting code everything together into a single application. In microservices, what we do, we develop product separately, we develop cart separately, and user management as a separate applications, and we deploy into different environments. Okay, so we divide each module as a separate application. Okay, each independent module as a separate application and we deploy into different environments. Okay, so that we can improve lot of application performance and we can improve the agility, or else parallel development. Multiple teams can work on multiple modules, parallelly, and they can test and they can deliver. Okay, that is the beauty of microservices. Okay, so we deploy it into each separate environment and we configure them through API gateways, and the views code also we deploy separately. So views will hit API gateway will talk with all other modules. Okay, this is the different architecture style that we discuss. Okay, so this is how we can able to build applications using Spring Boot, uh, like Spring Framework. Using Spring Framework, standard Spring Framework, you can able to build application, and finally you need to convert into a var, and you need to deploy into external servers. Whereas in Spring Boot you doesn't need any external server, as because Spring Boot itself is having its own self containers. You can run it on just Java. Internally, the Java will run your Tomcat or Jetty or Undertow, and those classes are going to, those containers are going to manage all your modules. In case if your modules are having huge number of users requests, and if you want to develop them parallelly, what you can do, you can develop them as a microservices by using Spring Boot only. In Spring Boot only we have that support. So using Spring Boot, you can develop each microservice separately and you can deploy it into multiple different environments. Okay, and you can able to manage them as a separate application. Okay. Now coming to the architecture pattern, what we follow while implementing, right? Whether it's a Spring Boot application or Spring application or microservice application, we follow MVC pattern. Okay, we follow MVC architecture pattern to implement any application. We follow MVC architecture pattern for implementing any application, right? Whether it is a Spring Boot, Spring, or microservice application, we follow MVC architecture pattern, model view controller. Okay, MVC stands for model view controller. We follow this pattern. This is architecture pattern we follow for implementing application. Consider you are implementing product management. You started with your first module, product management. I have a product management and I want to start with it. How do you implement it? How do you implement it? What kind of pattern you follow? Okay, as a developer, you follow this pattern MVC, right? First, you create a separate view layer for presentation classes. We create views separately, right? We don't combine view logic with Java logic. We write separate view pages .html or .jsp pages, like product .jsp or html or .html. Product .jsp or .html page we create for the views. Okay, so from this product.jsp or product.html, I want to manage all the product related things, adding product or update product or delete product. All these operations I want to manage here from product.jsp or product.html. So we create a separate HTML page. There we write only view logic. Okay, the presentation layer logic we write. So when it is a add or update or delete, okay, so to do these operations, add operation or update or delete operation, we need to implement back end side implementation. Okay, so this is front end implementation and we need to provide back end implementation. Okay, so this is front end implementation. Similar way we need to implement back end implementation. So for back end implementation, you choose Spring or any other framework also. We follow this MVC pattern. Okay, so we start with controllers in the backend, right? We start with controllers. So the controller basic first responsibility is it need to read the request from view, which is coming from the views. When it is a add product or update product, when you submit the request, when you submit the request, the request first will come to controller. Controller is the first class which will receive the request from views. So here controller which operations will handle here? It basically read the data, read the data which is coming from the views, and it will validate the data, whether the data is valid or not. Basic validations we do, and we do security operations, whether user is having author, authorized user or not. Is he logged in with his valid credentials or not? So we do authentication and authorizations here. So the basically all that operations we handle through controller. So the basic main responsibilities is read the data which is coming from the UI and validate it. Okay. So thereafter, controller should not do any other operations. If it needs any business operations or business calculations, if you have any calculations kind of thing, that calculations we need to handle through service layer. We need to handle it through service layer. Okay, here we need to do all the calculation stuff, all the business logic. So all the business logics we need to have here. All the business logic we need to have here. So the request controller should forward it to service. And once done with the service operations, if you want to save this data permanently, we use DAO layer. So the DAO layer will do all the CRUD operations. It will do all the CRUD operations: insert, update, delete, select. All that select operations we do here, like create record, update record, retrieve record, okay, delete record, any operations. We do all that operations here on database. So DAO will do all these operations on your database system. So you will have a database to store the data or to update or delete. So you need a database system. So we use a database to keep our data permanently here. So databases are to store data permanently. So DAO will deal with this database for doing the CRUD operations. So once done with the business logic, the data will forward it to DAO. DAO will forward this data to database. Okay. So here as part of MVC, this is the view layer, front end. And coming to back end, we have controller, then which is the model is here. So the service and DAO are part of model layer only. Okay, these all are part of model layer. All your service operations and DAO operations you handle through excuse me, model layer only. Okay, so all these operations you handle through model layer only. So this is the basic architecture pattern that we follow for any thing, right? Either it's a Spring or Struts or .NET you are using or PHP, we follow this pattern. A clear logic separation we do for doing, for managing your classes, clear logic separations to maintain for the maintainability, right? In future, if you want to change only business logic, we go and change the business logic. If you want to change only database logic, and we change database logics here only. So for the maintainability and reusability, we do clear logic separation using this MVC architecture pattern. Okay, so this is the pattern that we follow always. Okay, so even in Spring implementation or Spring Boot or microservices, we follow the standard MVC pattern. We create a view separately, we write controller class for doing read and validate data, and for doing business operations we use service, and for doing CRUD operations we use DAO. Now as we want to start with Spring, right, as we want to start with Spring framework, where we are going to use this Spring Core, JDBC, ORM, AOP, all these modules. We have 7 modules where we are going to use these modules if I follow this pattern. Okay, if you follow this pattern, if you start with Spring, right, Spring framework, if you start with Spring framework, where you are going to use these modules, Spring framework modules. As I said, there are 7 modules, right? So where you are going to use that 7 modules. So for controller layer, right, we use MVC, Spring MVC module. So the last module, 7th module, right, Spring MVC. Spring MVC we use for controller operations. And what about security? For security we use Spring security module, the 6th module, right, Spring security. We use Spring security also as part of controller layer. And what about service for business logic and database operations? Along with business logic, sometimes we need to apply filters. some additional services we will add on top of our business logic using Spring AOP. We do that using Spring AOP. We do that. And if you want to add transactions on your service, basically, transactions you will apply on database, but you need to handle that from business layer only. Okay, so Spring transactions also you apply through service layer only. Okay, so 4 modules covered here: Spring MVC, Spring Security, Spring Transactions, Spring AOP. And what about ORM, JDBC, and Core? So JDBC and ORM we use for doing database operations only. For CRUD operations only we use Spring JDBC. For this DAO layer only we are going to use Spring JDBC. Okay, it's a database connectivity module. It's similar like your plain JDBC only, but this is little advanced. And if you want to connect by using ORM tool also, you can able to connect. You can use Spring ORM here. Using Spring ORM also you can implement a DAO layer. Okay, 6 modules covered. Spring MVC security we use for controller, and Spring AOP transactions we use with service, and JDBC ORM we use for DAO. So apart from this, we have another module called Spring Core. We have another module called Spring Core. So where we are going to use this Spring Core module. Okay, Spring Core module is having two different things. Okay, Spring Core module is having two different things. Spring Core module is having two different things as part of Spring Core. As part of Spring Core, Spring Core is having containers. Spring Core is having the main important things are containers. Spring Core is having its own self containers. It have containers. Spring Core is having containers. Okay, we call them IOC containers. IOC containers it has. So what is the use of the Spring IOC containers? So once you're done with your development of your controller services DAO using these modules, right? Where you are going to run all your classes, where you are going to run all your controller classes, service and DAO classes. You need to run all these classes on this IOC containers only. As you use these modules, right? You need to run all your classes, your service classes, your controller classes and DAO classes. All these classes are going to run on Spring Core IOC containers only. So this is the first thing. As part of
Sir, actually,
Core,
voice is breaking in between sometimes.
sorry,
Yes, sir. Actually, audio is breaking sometimes in between.
low. Am I audible now? Is it good?
Yes, sir, audible, but sometimes it is not coming. Audio is breaking in between.
Yeah, I think today we have a bad internet connectivity. Yeah, we will rectify this. Okay, by tomorrow I'll change it. Only today we have this problem. We don't have this problem before. Maybe some bad network.
Okay.
Yeah, sure. So between, right, you people share your email IDs in the chat. Okay, between everyone, right? Privately or personally. I mean, on to everyone or privately to share with me all your email IDs so that I'll able to share my content and the URLs and these paints and everything. Okay, share your email IDs. Okay, so here when you implement your MVC application, for controllers we use Spring MVC security, and for service side we use AOP transactions, and for DAO we use JDBC ORM here. So to run all these classes we use Spring Core module. Where you are going to Spring Core, which is the first module, means the Spring Core is having self containers to run your classes. To run your classes it has its own self containers. So you need to learn Spring Core, and you need to learn about Spring Core IOC containers. They are part of Spring Core module. We have IOC containers. We need to learn about IOC containers first, so that you can able to run any class. You can able to run any class on IOC containers. This is the first and foremost feature that we need to learn from Spring Core module. Apart from this, what we have in Spring Core? This is the first thing. Apart from this, Spring Core is having some beautiful features for doing integration between all these modules. So we implemented all the modules, but how do we configure them? How do we integrate them? So all that configuration and integration, everything we are going to do using core module only. So all the configuration and the integration, everything we manage, everything we manage, configuration and integration, everything we manage using Spring Core module only. Spring Core module only is having all the configurations features and the integration features. Okay. So first we start with Spring Core module to learn how to use IOC containers and how to do configurations, how to do integrations and all we learn using Spring Core module only. Okay. Once done with the Spring Core module, it is simple to understand MVC or AOP, transactions, JDBC, WARM, all these modules will become simple to us. Then what about Spring Boot? Even in Spring Boot also we have all these features. Okay. So, but we have annotation based features we have. So if we learn with these modules, right, all these modules, Spring Boot will be easy to us. So Spring Boot also having the same features with annotation support that we understand in Spring Boot. Apart from this, right, apart from this, once you develop this application, right, as I said, this application you are going to convert finally into a WAR file. Finally, you are going to run it into a Tomcat. So finally, you convert into .war file and you run this on Tomcat. So you might ask me a question here. As you are saying, IOC is having containers. They are running all the classes. Why we need Tomcat? Okay, we'll discuss about this in a later part. Okay. So there is only one class Tomcat is going to run from the Spring. There is only one servlet class, dispatcher servlet. Only one single class is there, dispatcher servlet. The Tomcat will create dispatcher servlet class object, and this dispatcher servlet going to call your container. So dispatcher servlet will call your containers and your containers will create all your classes objects. When you implement your classes, right? Consider you implemented 10 controllers, 10 services, 10 DOs. All that 30 classes are going to manage by your IOC container only. But to call this IOC container, to trigger this IOC container, we use dispatcher servlet. Only the Tomcat is going to start the dispatcher servlet. That's it. Otherwise, Tomcat is not required to us. Okay. So yeah, this is how the traditional Spring framework implementation we used to do. Okay. Yeah. So we start with Spring Core module from tomorrow. Okay. We start with Spring Core module. Okay. So this is the order that we follow: Spring Core, JDBC, ORM, AOP, transaction security, MVC, and the next Spring Boot topics, the next microservices topics. This is our blog. So here only I'll update daily content and the examples. So from here you can download everything, each daily based examples, everything are available here. So the day one content to day two, day three, all the examples we have. Just you need to click on this, you will get the example downloads. So when you click on it, you will get the download. Just you need to download in your machine and you should practice it. Okay. All the materials, everything I'll share. And the content
Sir,
duration. Yeah.
hello.
Yes, yes. I can hear you.
Sir, actually, just wanted to know that for other like Jetty and other built-in servers, the dispatcher server is not there.
Yes, it is there.
Jetty and
It is there.
GitHub,
Even in Spring
it
Boot
is.
also, when you follow this architecture, whether you are using Spring framework or when you are using Spring Boot framework, whatever it is internally, dispatcher servlet will be called.
Okay.
Okay. So this is
Because
the
you said
same pattern. Yeah.
Only for Tomcat dispatcher server is needed. No? So I asked.
Only for dispatcher servlet, Tomcat is needed. Okay.
Okay, okay.
So as I have this servlet, end of the day, servlets are the components who will receive the request from browsers. Okay. So we use this dispatcher servlet internally. This is internal class that we no need to implement. We just configure this. So this class is starting by Tomcat, and this class is going to start your IOC containers.
Okay. Similarly for Jetty also, yes,
Same
similar
thing.
way, right?
Same
Jetty.
thing. Even if it is a
Okay.
Spring Boot, Jetty, or Undertow, they will call dispatcher servlet. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's all for today. So by tomorrow, the demo sessions will be finished, and from Monday, we will start the regular sessions. Okay. Tomorrow is Friday, right? So yeah. So please confirm by Monday or by tomorrow, and you will get a new link. Okay. A separate link for the regular sessions. Okay. There we will have all the discussions.
Excuse me, sir.
Yeah.
Sir, for IOC containers, they will create object, no, sir, and also maintain that object from starting to till end.
Yes. That is what I'm saying here. All the classes are going to manage by your IOC containers only. So the container definition is that, right? So the containers will do what? They will create object, they will manage life cycles, right?
Yeah.
Apart from that,
Okay.
Spring is having many other features. Not only that, dependency injection features it have. We don't have this dependency injection feature in Tomcat, but we have in our IOC containers. We can do dependency injection. We can do auto wiring. There are many great features. Okay, so the one by one we should go to understand them in a order.
Okay, sir. Thank you.
Yeah. So thanks all. That's all for today. Yeah, we'll connect same time tomorrow. I'm sharing my contact also here. If you didn't share the if you didn't share your email ID here, just send it me in the WhatsApp. Okay, it's 918266 248. Okay, for everyone I shared in the chart, or else you can see here. Okay, so this is my number. You can reach out to me if you have any doubts. Okay, so these sessions will be available through YouTube. You will get the link, right? You must be received one more email. There you must see the demos URL. Okay, you must see here they have shared one more URL, right? So here you must see a demo URL. If you go there, you can see all the videos. Mm, yeah, I think they'll share it today. Okay, so they'll share one YouTube link. There you can see all the demo videos as well. Okay, all our regular discussions will be uploaded there, and they will share it with you. So that's all, guys. Okay, we'll meet same time tomorrow. Till then, good day to everyone. Yeah, thanks all. Bye.